welcome to this week's episode of Eye of the Swarm, Season 5, Episode 6?
Yep.
Question mark?
6.
Period.
There's 6.
All right.
Yep.
Episode 6, your deep dive in anything and everything related to Yellowjacket athletics with the big sound Matt Johnson. I am John Garver, and before we dive into the usual sports talk, last week on a Tuesday, it was a frigid night of Halloween.
Yes, it was.
Trick-or-treating with a 4-year-old who amazingly just never got cold. And let's just keep going. Mom and Dad are freezing. He just wanted to keep going. So where do you stand on Halloween? That's my question for the week.
In what regard?
Where do you stand on it?
I like it.
I think it's great for kids.
I like it.
But
I loved it when I was a kid.
I know I dare. It makes me a stick in the mud. I just, as an adult, I'm not getting dressed up. I'm not putting that kind of effort into it.
If I am, I guess it depends. My dad used to with us. Not every year, but every once in a while we could convince him to do it. I guess it depends on really your individual taste and preference. Would I do it if I was out trick-or-treating? If I was taking the kid out or the kids out for trick-or-treating? I would definitely consider it. Mm-hmm. Just make it kind of a family affair, right? And kind of make sure the kids are having a good time too. Just like, look at Dad. Dad's all dressed up. But I mean, there's arguments to be had for not doing that too. Mm-hmm. My brother-in-law, I can tell you this, with Nick, he didn't get dressed up.
Right.
My sister did not get dressed up.
Yep. We didn't either.
Yeah. So I mean, it just depends. I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that question. Speaking as the holiday as a whole, I love it. Mm-hmm. It's great for the kids. Fantastic.
No, I don't have a problem with it for the kids.
Yeah,
but as
adults,
as I've gotten older, it's like I
one of the things you find out as you get older is that Halloween. See, when you're a kid, you think it's just for the kids, right? Like you find out that adults are dressing up and going out to Halloween parties and stuff weekend before, especially this year because it was during a weekday. Mm-hmm. And some of the costumes that I saw wandering around downtown Duluth were pretty inventive. But like as an adult, was I ever tempted if I was going out like on Halloween weekend or during the Halloween week to get dressed up? No, not really.
Okay. Not really.
I mean, I did last year, not this past Halloween, but the Halloween prior at the liquor store because they asked us to. So I did, and I went as an athletic coach. Oh. So it was very, very straightforward. Yeah. And we all went. I mean, everything.
So you basically wore what you always wear. You just put a whistle on.
I just put I put a whistle on. I had a pencil behind my ear. I had a clipboard.
Mike Tice.
Yeah.
All right.
I did the whole thing.
Selling some Super Bowl tickets too?
Yeah. It was, not quite. Yeah. I mean, I did it last year, and we had to take a group photo and all this kind of stuff. But overall, no, I'm not somebody who's going to get dressed up. I mean, this year I got invited to a couple Halloween parties. I had to work the Saturday beforehand, and I was pretty tired. And then I had 2 Halloween shindigs to go to that night, and my mom was like, "Okay, well, go." So I didn't dress up for either one of them because I literally, as soon as I got done at the liquor store, I literally went straight to the parties. Mm-hmm. So my costume was literally I was in my Cashwise work clothes. So I went as a disgruntled Cashwise liquor worker, liquor clerk. So. Yeah, I mean, but like, do I have a problem though? That people dress?
I like you put the word disgruntled in there.
Yeah, I'm a
disgruntled employee.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I just kind of sat there and I need a drink now or whatever. But it was, I don't begrudge people that want to though.
Right.
Like they can do it. That's fine. It's just really not my bag. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I think that's where I fall too.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of what I was curious about. But at any rate, we don't need to talk about Halloween
We digress.
Anymore. We have 51
digress.
weeks until we have to discuss it again. But big week.
It was an incredibly big week, and a lot of stuff happened. At a certain point, I got kind of confused because there was so much stuff happening. But
there was a lot happening.
Yeah, there was a lot happening. Of course, the headline is that men's and women's soccer teams back to the NCAA tournament again for the men. It's 7 straight UMAC tournament titles, 6 straight trips to the NCAA, of course.
The Rona.
Yeah, the Rona stepped in.
The Rona got in there.
Yeah, the Rona got in there for what would have been the 7th. Mm-hmm. And now the women with 3 in a row, and congratulations to both teams.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There was a bit of a hiccup for the women in the semifinal against Crown, which I think maybe refocused them a little bit.
It probably did, but at the same time, I think there was a little bit of
There were a few bounces that didn't go their way.
It was just one of those things.
Yeah,
it was just one of those things.
And Crown played a really smart game that day.
Well, they knew there was only one way that they were going to win that match.
Yeah, and they sold out to defend.
Yeah,
and they sold out to defend, and more power to them because they kept it close. The game against Northwestern was much more open, much more direct, and UWS gets 2 goals from Nia Wilson, a goal and 2 assists from Maya Holmquist. I mean, the beat goes on for those two. And back to the NCAA tournament for them now, 16 wins and counting. They're taking on UW Lacrosse, former WIAC conference opponent. Lacrosse is really good. They're top 15 in the country.
Yep.
So that'll be a good test. And then the men, of course, it's just become kind of a yearly ritual. Yeah, it's what they do. I'm not sure that everyone would expected the game-winning goal to come from Carson Cleddy, who has been playing outside back.
Yeah, pretty rare to have that on your bingo card.
Yeah, but it was a really well-played ball in by Joel Thomas, and it was served up on a platter, back post.
I saw that from the bus. I was watching on the bus.
Yeah, I mean it was really well played. It wasn't a fluky goal. Right. It was a well-deserved goal. Yeah. And for a guy like Carson Cleddy, who, like I said, he's been moved around a lot in his Yellowjacket career. He started, in high school he was a central defender or an outside defender. He played back line. He came here, and Joe immediately turned him into a midfielder, which was a little bit of a change. I mean, it's a big change for a soccer player to go from playing defensively to being now a midfielder. Played at midfield for 2 or 3 years, and they moved him back now to his more comfortable position, which is back. And he's had some injury bumps and bruises along the way, but really nice to see him. He got a goal against Northwestern in the semifinal on Wednesday.
Yep.
And then he gets the game winner. He was named UMAC tournament MVP, which was cool, for a guy that, like I said, hasn't scored a lot of goals and has been shuffled around a lot. Yep. It was really cool to see him get that goal and get that, because he's a really nice kid too. I mean, nice family. And Joel Thomas played an outstanding game. He was really good. He was all over the field. I would grade out both teams in their respective title games as being really, really good. Sure, they both played really, really well. The women were firmly in control for the most part against Northwestern. Did a really good job of slowing down Haley Mersberger, who, she came in with 29 goals on the season, and she got, I think, 1 shot off the whole game, and it was from 30 yards out. Yep. It was along the ground. I mean, she really did not get free at all. And then the men's game, Bethany didn't really create much either. Right. I mean, they tried to press at the end of the game a little bit, but for the first about 75 minutes, it wasn't. I wouldn't want to say it's completely one-way traffic, but UWS did a really good job of keeping them to the outside. Sure. And after they scored the goal, Bethany had a really hard time penetrating the 18. Yep. So, I mean, very deserved, returns to the NCAA tournament for both teams. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
so.
And volleyball won 2 matches.
Yeah, they won there too, so they're locked in at number 3.
Yep, and they're playing in the playoffs tonight. We record this on a Wednesday or Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, so
they play tomorrow. Wednesday, sorry. But they play Morris on the road tomorrow in the semifinal. That's a 2-3
matchup for them.
Yeah, that's a tough. I mean, that Morris team is good.
Yeah,
they're tough. They finished second. I think they
had
won
2
19,
losses.
Yeah,
they lost twice to Northwestern.
Yeah, who's the number 1 seed, obviously.
Number 3 in the country.
Yeah, number 3 in the country. And I think Morris won 19 or 20 games in the regular season, so they're legit. And then the hockey teams continued on. A couple of tough ones in there, though. It was a tough weekend.
It was a tough weekend on the ice,
yeah,
for both the men
and the women. Both men and the women.
Yeah.
Women lost 2 non-conference games, 1 to Hamlin, 1 to Augsburg, and the guys lost to Augsburg and Concordia.
Yep.
Looked like they had a really good chance of winning the game against Concordia, but then the third period was a rough one.
They honestly had a good chance.
The night before. Yeah,
they had a chance to win both of them.
Yeah.
Just real quick, the trend for them so far is they play 2 periods, and they take 1 off.
Yeah.
Against St. Scholastica, great opening 10 minutes. Next 20 minutes, they really didn't do much.
Right.
And then the last 20 minutes, they really turned it on. Against Augsburg, first period was fantastic, one of the best we've seen. Second period, they forgot to play. Third period, they ran out of. They played well and they ran out of time.
Right.
At Concordia, they remedied the second period problem, were really good for the first 40 minutes, and then forgot to play the third. Yeah. So Coach McKenna's got some work to do that way to try to.
Yeah. Can't play 40, got to play 60.
To get them to string 60 good minutes together.
Yeah, that's kind of the story in college hockey too. You can't play 40, you got to play 60.
No, and for, they're a young team. There's a lot of youth there. And
a lot of newcomers.
There's a lot of newcomers on that team again.
Was it 11 or 12 new guys? Something like that, isn't it?
I think it's 13.
13?
I think he's at 13.
He's on 13.
He flipped half his roster.
Yeah.
And so
guys are trying to figure
there's
each other out.
There's going to be growing pains there.
Yeah, and the guys are coming in from all over.
There's going to be a learning curve to it. So It's just like it is in other sports.
Yep.
Jumping from high school to college, it's a big step. Coming from junior to the college level, even at Division III, it's a big step.
Right.
Because these guys are bigger, they're older, they're faster, they're stronger.
Yep.
So it's a big step. It's a transition, and they're going to have some growing pains, and we'll see what happens this weekend when they finally get on home ice. Maybe that changes some of it a little bit.
Right. Yeah, because they got Bethel coming up, I think, for a home game on.
Yeah, Bethel Friday and St. Mary's on Saturday.
Yep. So it's going to be a couple of home games, and men's basketball opens up this weekend.
Yep, they're home for the first time with the Merrill
Yep.
Thompson.
Lacrosse in River Falls.
So jumping right into it.
Yeah, jumping right into it.
He's going to have two good opponents right off the bat.
Lacrosse is a team that has been in the top 20 a lot the last few years. They've been a little bit up and down at times, but consistent winner.
Yep.
And River Falls is always a tough opponent too. So
Yep.
that'll be good. And the women's basketball also opens up this weekend. They're on the road. They're going down to Chicago to play a couple games. And
Actually, the men open Wednesday.
Yeah,
they're at McAllister.
Yeah, they're actually McAllister tomorrow.
Yep.
So I mean, they got 3 games on the docket this week, and that's gonna be a tough game. That's gonna be an interesting game. McAllister just played the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, I saw that.
In an exhibition game.
They got beat by 60 points, but
yeah, but they had a kid that went out for 41 points, and his name is Caleb Williams, and he's a guy that UWS is gonna have to check and keep a close eye on. So
you think?
Yeah, against Minnesota, he took 31 shots.
Right.
So I mean, it's not
he
super efficient.
Took all of their shots.
Yeah, he basically took all their shots in that game. But and it is an exhibition, so it's a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, they're going hot and heavy here. Apparently, the McAllister team is supposed to be pretty good. So we'll see where we're at after the weekend's over. Men's basketball was picked 3rd in the preseason coaches poll in the UMAC. Women were picked 4th.
Yep.
About probably where you expect them to be.
Yeah.
But the men bring back just about everybody from last year, and the women lost some key contributors. We'll see what they look like. It's going to be a different looking squad for Emily Carpenter this year.
I think so. They got size.
Yeah, they're going to be a lot bigger.
They've got a post presence now.
Yeah, they got a 6'3" freshman that came in, and she's going to make she led the entire state of Wisconsin in rebounding in high school last year.
Right.
So that's going to be a different look, and we'll see how that plays out. But
yeah.
It's going to be. We're in that crossover season. There's going to be a lot going on. Of course, the men and the women's soccer teams are the headliners. They'll be playing. In the tournament.
That's the big one, and we'll be focusing on for most of the week, and we'll be focusing on during the rest of this episode as we're going to be joined by Yellowjacket head coach Joe Mooney. So we'll take a time out. We'll come back with the roundtable segments, and we'll talk some NCAA soccer. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching Eye of the Swarm.
Find your passion. Find your people. Find your purpose. Find your superior.
We're back on the roundtable segment of Eye of the Swarm, and this week we are joined by Yellowjacket men's soccer coach Joe Mooney, who another UMAC championship, another trip to the NCAA tournament, blah, blah, blah,
Thanks,
blah, blah.
Garth.
But at any rate, congratulations on getting back to the dance, and, kidding aside, it is a big deal, and it is hard work, and it does take a lot to make that, to get back to that, so 6 times now, where does this one stack up?
I mean, they're all special, right? And I think you're right. It was a good reminder to me this week. So after we won on Saturday, I was just kind of like, well, I'll just go throw the trophy in my truck, and we'll just get it there on Monday, and just hope I don't break it in the meantime, right? And our assistant coaches, a couple of them are new to the staff this year, and one of them, Gus, took the trophy home, tucked it into bed, sent pictures to the staff the next morning of him with his daughter with the trophy, and it was just kind of like, my first glance at it was kind of like, he's acting like a kid with this thing. And then I thought back to the first time we had won it, and I did the same thing, And so it was really cool to see how special it was to members of the staff. And as a reminder, it is hard to win championships. It is hard, and it is new for different members of the team,
right.
And for different members of the staff. And it should always, I feel like we should celebrate it like it's our first one every time. Even though it may not be for me, there should be that specialness for members of the team.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, 6 in a row. People start thinking it's routine, and that's just what we do here. Mm-hmm. But it is different. I mean, even for the guys that have been now, this is a couple of them. This is their 4th trip. It's
and I'll tell you, Matt. I think the last couple, this one included, very much so. It felt harder. I think that there are a number of teams in the conference that are making it harder because
Yeah.
of the steps that they're taking. I give a lot of credit to Bethany Lutheran. They lost Max Bush a couple years back, 2 years back, All-American forward, tremendous, just pain in the butt in our conference, terrific player. Last year they had, why can't I think of his
Portuguese
name right?
kid. Yeah.
Yes, Lima. Thank
Yep.
you. Yeah, Antonio Lima, who was terrific, a freshman player that took the conference by storm. He transferred out. They had a two-time Defensive Player of the Year in Liam Peterson, who did his knee actually at our place the first time around.
Yeah.
And we thought it was so innocuous, and I saw him after the game and just said, hey, hope it's just a little bruise on your knee and get right quickly. I mean, he played for a good chunk after that, if I remember right. And, it just seems so innocuous. And so they lost him midseason.
Yep.
And I will say, it was a really, really tough game.
Yeah, it was.
And it's credit to their coaching staff for the game prep that they put in, their players. I mean, there are a number of players on that side that are an absolute handful to deal with. And I think that there are a number of MIAC teams, other regional teams that they've played this year that would say the same thing. Yeah. In fact, as I was scouting Bethany each time, other MIAC coaches did say the same thing about them, that they've got players that are a handful. And so, well, yeah, you can say that there's consecutive championships and whatever. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And other teams I would give a shout out. I mean, obviously, the work that Greg Gilmore and you and I know Greg pretty well.
Yep.
The work that he has done with Northland is
he'll be watching this.
Oh yeah, he will be. He asked me specifically. He's like, "Let me know when Mooney's on." He actually texted me about
emailed
this.
Nick and said, I'm glad it's on video now. So he'll be watching.
Yeah,
he's-
I'm sure.
Hi,
Greg, when you tune in, man, enjoy.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, I think when you think about like the work that he's put in with that squad, I mean, his first year here, they came and we beat them 12-1 at our place, and to look at them now, I mean,
completely different team now. Yeah.
That game against them in the last week of the regular season was an absolute nail biter.
That was a dogfight. Yeah.
A
And
meat grinder, if you will.
a meat grinder.
Yeah, that was
Well played.
You're welcome.
Well played. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it just, so you look at those squads, Northwestern, Crown, like there isn't in that top, 4, 5, 6 teams, there just isn't a cupcake in there. And so, I mean, it's tough, and I give our guys a lot of credit for the work they put in. And, obviously last year, the national tournament left a pretty sour taste in our mouth.
Yeah.
And so for our guys to really, my fear was always going to be they're going to look ahead to the national tournament, and it's like you got to earn that spot first.
Yeah.
The national tournament wasn't on our schedule until we earned it. Right. So I give our guys a lot of credit for staying in.
And that's the hard part, right? Because when you know that you've been there every year for the last more than half a decade now, you're just like,
It's just
it's
just what we do.
It's just what we do here.
It's not automatic.
Yeah, it's not automatic. We're going to do it no matter what. And this was something actually that if you talk to the women's soccer players, same thing. You can't get that overconfidence and say, hey, we've been there every year since whenever. No, we got to, we actually still got to go out there and perform.
Yeah.
It's not just it's not a right. Mm-hmm. It's a privilege. Mm-hmm. And that's where trying to keep everybody's heads in the same place, in the same headspace is really, really important. I just wanted to give a big shout out to Karsten Kletty for getting the goal. Because Karsten has been sort of I don't want to say he's underappreciated, but he's been sort of overshadowed in his career. And he's played all over the pitch for you. I mean, you moved him around I don't know how many times since he came in as a freshman. I mean, you took him out of position his freshman year, and then now he's back to his natural position, which is what he played in high school.
Yeah.
And now he's killing it on the on that right outside back position. And it was really cool to see him get the game winner.
This is where, and I'm glad you brought him up, Mac, because I think this is where character really matters. So again, you bring up Karsten, and for 3 years he played in the midfield for us. And with some of the shuffling around that we had done, we brought Felipe in this year.
Right. Yep.
We brought Harry Ambler out of the center back role, put him in the midfield. A couple of our sophomore guys with the work that they've been putting in, there just wasn't a lot of room in the midfield. And so I looked at it and said, okay, I know Karsten can help us, but is he going to be is he going to be able to fight through that depth and really provide a lot of value for us in the midfield, or would he be more serviceable in a center back role? And we started out the season, we were in a 4-back, which means there's
Right.
2 center backs.
Yep.
And so rather than 3. And so originally it was really hard for him to get in. He was playing
Right.
second
Yep.
fiddle to our 2 captains. So you've
Right.
got
Yeah.
a returning all-region player in Alex Hansen, academic All-American, and then you've got Will Mainstrom, who was out all last year with an ACL injury, but was our starting center back before that injury
Right.
the
Yep.
previous year, right? So you've got a battle to try to get over those 2 players, and we've taken you out of a starting role in the midfield, said you're going to switch positions, and by the way, you're not going to be a starter anymore, and in your senior year.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of guys, that would have broken them.
Yeah.
Right.
Or at least shook them pretty hard.
Yep.
And he stayed so bought into the program and to our process. I had a number of conversations with him, and all of them were just very positive. And the general line he gave me was, if it's best for the team and if that's where you see my best ability to contribute, I'm in.
Right. Yeah.
And so to be in that position as a senior, where we've essentially just kind of yanked him out of playing time and out of a role he was comfortable in and all that, to stay that bought in,
Says a lot.
I'm just really proud of him, and I'm very happy that. And then he got injured too, so
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
then we switched to a 3-back. He found a role in that 3-back. He became one of our best defenders in the line. A lot of games you could say he was our best defender.
Right. Yeah.
And then he gets injured, and in the Bethany game, the second
Right.
Bethany
Yep.
game, and so then he's out for a couple of weeks, and so his first real.
I'll give him a
Talking to-
shout out too, because he had a heck of a game.
Talking to Derek Lingholm after the game, he mentioned that that's the first corner kick goal that they had conceded all year. And I told him, it's nothing against your guys. Like, they defended it very well. You could see
Right.
why they hadn't conceded in 22 games a single corner kick goal. They defend very well. But you're right. It was a perfectly placed ball, and then Karsten's header was just
right
a
on
towering
Yeah.
bullet.
It was
awesome.
Yeah. There was no way Lundberg was going to make the save on that one.
Yeah.
But, Joel
But yeah,
was-
you're right, Joel. So at the beginning of the year, in the preseason, we kind of broke everybody up into groups, into roles. Okay, and so we kind of given them different names. We had our the playmakers, we had the game breakers. Okay, so a game breaker would be a guy like Josh Bellamy, like Freddie Watson. In the past, a guy like Blake Perry, right? That'd be your game breaker. A playmaker would be a guy like Felipe, Mackey. Where
Right,
it's
yeah.
like they may not get the assist.
Right.
But every goal is going to come back to like when they break
Played the
play
ball.
open,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, played the ball right
Yep.
away. Yep.
And then we had another role that we had kind of titled game managers.
Okay.
And it was really kind of like your role players, or
Right.
kind of like your Swiss Army knife, your utility players. And Joel fits into that, where it's kind of like there is he's got so many different abilities. And there are times where I think it actually probably robs him of a starting position, because we look at it as he's certainly one of our best 11 players, but as the game settles in, we start to know a lot more what we need. And because he's got so many, like, he can fit into so many different roles, there are times where we haven't started him because we want him to come in once we know what the game is really calling for, and to be sort of that takeover player,
Right,
that super
yeah.
sub, if you will. And, again, this is where character really matters. It's hard to not be a starter.
Right. Yeah.
When you feel like you're playing like a starter, and he has played like a starter all season. But again, he embraces his role because he knows that's where he can add the most value. And and he's one of 3 players this year that's played in all 22 games, which is pretty cool.
He's it was. I think actually that it threw them for a loop. Talking about Bethany Lutheran when Joel started at forward, because I think everybody thought, well, that's where Stoker starts, because he started in that spot. Stoker came out the bench, but it was
and part of the reason that we made that switch, because Stoker's been playing.
He's been playing really well.
Yep,
so, especially second half of the year. Yeah.
So the reason we made that switch though was in the Bethany game at their place. Joel came into the game as a forward. His pairing with Jay Kidd led to the first goal.
Okay.
He then shifted out to the right. He got the second goal.
Right.
And I just thought his pairing with Jake was terrific in that game. We felt like that's what it called for.
He was really good against Bethany too,
Yep.
on the championship game. I mean, he was giving them fits back there. Mm-hmm. Throughout that first half, and I thought, they're going to pop one, and it's going to be because of Joel.
I watched the game back the next morning.
Yeah.
And that first sequence, about 3.5 minutes in, where Joel sprung Jake Kidd open.
Yeah.
He gets in a one-on-one.
Yep.
Credit to Lundberg for making the save.
And then Joel had to look at the net, and I thought, okay.
And then it pops out to Joel out
Yeah.
right there, and you could see him. Because the ball pulls him out wide.
Yeah, he couldn't get around
and
on
to
it.
get his hips around to score would have been a tough ask, but he had a wide open net to do it. So, yeah.
I knew right then, because he was giving them fits throughout that half when he was
Absolutely.
at the forward spot.
Yep.
I mean, they didn't know how to handle him, because he's got that quickness. He's very, very, Stoker's a bigger kid, a little more rangy. More Joel's kind of low to the ground, and he's similar to Freddie in certain ways because of that. Because he can handle the ball, he can come centrally, but he played a whale of a game that day. I mean, I think I said it on the air. But.
Is that a pun? He is Welsh, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
If that was intentional, Matt, I give you a lot of credit.
It wasn't.
All right,
It wasn't.
well, I'll take the credit anyways.
But yeah, he was. I thought the 2 best guys on the field for you that day, and there were a lot of guys that were good, were Joel and Carson. I thought Carson was really good too. Not just after he scored the goal, he was just really solid. Even after the goal was scored,
Yeah.
I mean, he did what he needed to do. He kept everybody in front. They didn't create a lot of opportunities, and I give a lot of that opportunity. I give a lot of credit for that to your back line. Especially going from a 4-back to a 3-back, that's not easy. Everybody's got to really know their assignments and really follow it. And
The other guy that I thought was tremendous in the game and deserves more credit probably than he even got like stats wise or anything like that was Harry.
okay,
To get a card as early as he did
In
to
the
get a
first
yellow
minute
card,
20.
Yeah, I'd say that was less than 2 minutes in.
yeah.
And so then to have to play on a card for the rest of the game and still be as aggressive as he was and time everything as well as he did. Those are things that don't show up on the stat sheet. It won't even necessarily show up as you watch the game and just. I think you could watch the game and say, okay, he's one of your best players for sure.
Yeah.
But when you add that element of he had to play restrained because he was on an early card, I think it just really showcases how dialed in he was to that game.
Yeah.
And how big of a piece he has been for us this year. And that switch, again, it's one of those where he's a natural center back. That's all he's
Right.
played. Except we took him out of the center back for a couple games his freshman year. But other than that, that is what he's played. So to come into the midfield and really just buy into what we need him to do there it's been a huge piece for us this year.
There was also a moment in the second half where Jake Kidd I thought he was on his way to scoring a highlight reel goal, because he weaved through about 5 of their guys. He literally went zoop, 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 and got all the way in, had a shot at a sharp angle, and Lundberg made the save on it. But I was like, if he scores that one, that's one that goes on one of the all-time highlight reels for UWS soccer. I mean, Jake went through about 4 or 5 guys. And I think you remember which play I'm talking about. He took it near midfield. He did like a Lionel Messi, where he was just slaloming through all of these guys. He comes in at a sharp angle, and he got a lot on the shot. But Lundberg made the save. But I said on the air, I think at the time, I said, if he scores that goal, that's a highlight reel goal for sure on that one.
Jake's had an awesome season.
Yeah.
You always worry about that sophomore slump.
He didn't really have it.
No.
Yeah, he didn't really have it.
No, and I think we're just scratching the surface with him.
Yeah, I mean, he had 10 last year. He has 13 this year. And against Bethany, he could have had 2. That first one that we talked about, and then that one where he was slaloming through everybody and then got the shot away.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like early in the year too, it was every single match you look at the box, he scored. He had a stretch where
he was scoring every
he was
time.
scoring every single match.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he kind of helped bridge the post Blake Perry era.
Yeah.
until it became a little, until the game kind of rounded out a little bit.
Well, and that was the question: where were the goals going to come
right,
from?
exactly.
Yeah,
that was the big question for everybody.
Yeah, like who's going to score the goals? Well,
Yeah.
Jake Kidd's going to score the goals.
And a shout out to Blake, because obviously I haven't talked about him enough in the last 5 years, right?
Right.
But a shout out to him. Where the goal is going to come from. I mean, you mentioned this to me. I didn't even realize it, that we had 20 different
goal scorers this year. Yeah.
So it took 20 of us to make up
to
that
make up
hole
for
a
the
little bit.
all-time leading goal scorer in
Yeah.
Yellowjacket history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, in all seriousness, like it really has. It's been a wealth share for the guys this year. And I do think it's, people have asked, do you think you're better this year than you were last year? And again, I mean, when you lose a player like Blake Perry, it's really hard to say you're going to be better. But I do think we've gotten better in a lot of positions. So bringing Felipe in, getting Will back healthy, just our overall health. I mean, we were so banged up last year.
Yeah.
And this year I feel like we're a lot healthier going to the NCAA tournament. We've got, little bumps and bruises, and there are things that we are managing, as everyone is at this point in the
Right.
year.
Yep.
But it's a whole different scenario. I mean, I think, we must have kept Casper working overtime
Yeah.
throughout the season. I mean, and it started in preseason with Will's
Right.
ACL. It
Yeah.
seemed like every game we lost somebody big from there on out. And this year we've been a lot kinder to him. So.
Yeah, well, it also showcases that depth. I mean, you and I have talked about the depth time and time and time again. I mean, this year, if you look at the scoring numbers, I mean, Jake had 13, Josh has got 9, then it's, Phil's got 7. And then there's 4 guys that have 5. I think it's Stoker has 5.
And Phil didn't score for the first half of the season.
Yeah, and Phil was scuffling there at the
Another,
start. Yeah.
another guy that when you talk about character, it's like, because he's been a starter for a long time for us.
Yeah.
And he hasn't started many games this year because his production was waning early in the season. And he knew it, like, I hadn't lost trust in him or faith in him, but I also had to give guys, who were scoring, I had to give them shots at starting minutes. And so that's, especially for a forward, that can be such a blow to your ego and to your confidence. And he has, in the last third of the season, just been on fire for us.
Yeah.
And it's not been easy tap-in goals. I mean, it's been awesome goals. His header the other night was awesome.
Yeah.
His first goal in the Martin Luther game, if you go back and watch the video when we were at their place, I mean, it's a first touch out of the air, and then it's a flick on the outside of his right foot that essentially goes over his shoulder and into the goal. And it's just it's one of those where nobody would have predicted he's doing that, and he pulled it off. He's been just on
and the thing about Phil is that
clip.
his work rate is really high. And that's been throughout his career. He's always been a guy that has come in and is not afraid to make those long, hard runs to the corner. And
it's got to be the military man in him.
Yeah,
the year he spent with the Norwegian.
Plus, and whenever he
Kingsguard,
scores a big goal and he does the backflip, everybody loves it.
Yep.
So it's
Makes for great theater,
Yeah, exactly.
Looks great on the highlight film, the photos, always good.
It's so funny too, because I actually, after he did the last backflip, I ran into him down a quick trip when I was on the way back, and I said, Phil, people want you to do more backflips. He's like, nah, that's got to be his first special moment. I can't just do it every time. It just, it's got to be for a big moment in the game. And because I remember the first time he did it, I think it was your daughters that went crazy and were trying to get him to do it for every goal he scored after that, and he was like, yeah. Because I mean, there was a couple times, I think it was his freshman, maybe sophomore year, he scored a goal, and the crowd was trying to get him to do the backflip, and he was like, he just kind of looked and he kind of apologized a little bit,
he's teasing him.
Yeah. But yeah, the backflip is pretty cool. I can't think of a better goal celebration that we've had in the men's side. I don't think, than Phil's backflip. That's pretty much up there.
Yeah.
But you're right. He's had a great second half of the year, and I was worried about him for a while because I was like, halfway through the year, I was like,
he's snake bit.
Yeah, he's not finding it right now, and I don't know if it's in his head or and because Stoker had a bit of a stretch there, and then he got off and started going. Freddie's been consistent all year. Joel's been pretty consistent all year. Felipe, he's got 5. And then I was worried about Phil for a while, and then Phil really turned it on the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he's become a bona fide now striker. And you can see his confidence is really high right now. Yep.
And this is the time of year where you want guys to be firing all cylinders, right?
Yep.
And you want that depth to be there. I mean, I feel confident with really any of the guys that you mentioned. We haven't obviously set a starting lineup for Saturday, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to what goes on in training this week, and to have those options and to have that kind of good, healthy rivalry within your training environment is huge.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. The selection show was yesterday, so now
Yep.
we know you're heading to the regional in Northfield, and you'll be playing St. Olaf in that first round match. So let's talk a little bit about that. Not completely unfamiliar with the Olis. You've played them over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the what do you expect to see?
A terrific team. I mean, just flat out a very terrific team. And I'm not going to talk at length about your alma mater here, Matt.
Yes, I do have connections to the St. Olaf program from way back in the day.
But I'll start out and I'll just say Justin Oliver, their coach. It's his first year as a head coach. He's done a terrific job of taking over for Travis Wall, who was there, and obviously he's got a connection to the program. And I know his guys are bought into what he's doing. I was texting back and forth with him a little bit yesterday, and I was just laughing. It's like, so he played at St. Thomas.
That's what to say. Yeah, he played against you guys in
he
the
and
NCAA
his twin
tournament.
brother Tyler
Yeah.
played at St. Thomas. So we knew them well from the NCAA tournament. We played them twice.
Once regular season, once the NCAA tournament. Yeah.
And I was just laughing. I'm like, gosh, would I rather face you as a player again or as a coach? And I don't know which one is tougher. Because, he and I had talked throughout the season, about scouts on different teams and just kind of generally about how the season was going. And it was very obvious to me he was ready to be a head coach. I don't think they skipped a beat. So I will say, first and foremost, St. Olaf will be extremely well coached. They will be extremely prepared for the game. And I think, this is going to be a very tough test for us. I will also say, at this point of the year, there's 64 teams in the tournament. There are no cupcakes, right? Yeah. It's only tough teams left at this point. So to get to the goals that we've set out at the beginning of the year, we're going to have to go through really good teams to do it. I do, without trying to be overconfident or anything like that, irregardless of the game or the opponent, when I just think about our team, I feel very confident in our team. I think we are playing really well right now. I think our mentality is really sharp. I think our training environment is at an all-time high right now. And so, when I look at the NCAA tournament, I feel like we're going into it with a confidence that, it really, this is a brand new season for us, and I think we're ready to make a splash in that season.
It's an interesting bracket when I looked at it. The 14 pod is very. It's almost ridiculously regional in a way, just because there's 3 teams within 2 hours of each other, and then you've got Pacific Lutheran, who is the outlier that has to fly in.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And you've got Carleton and St. Olaf in that same pod, and they're literally 2 miles apart. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's kind of a bizarre 4-team field, isn't it? I mean, in a way,
Yeah,
because
and
it's
to be
so
honest, I don't know much about Paclu.
Okay.
I do know Carleton is formidable this year as well. And you look at the teams that got out of the MIAC this year. Between St. Olaf and Carleton and Gustavus, there is not a slouch in that group.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
all of them have a wealth of tournament experience. And so within that pod, again, to have us, St. Olaf, Carleton, and then, Paclu has got a number of tournament appearances as well. And so there's a lot of experience going into that one. And I think whoever gets out of it could make a deep run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don?
Because I know some guys actually referred to it as the group of death to steal the international term when they saw that one come up.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
literally any one of the 4 schools in there could come out of this.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there are some brackets you look at it and go, well, they don't stand a chance out of coming out of there. But this one,
This one, yeah.
this one's dressed up pretty good, where anybody could go.
I think a few people were a little bit surprised that the committee put the 4 of you in the same spot. That was a little bit, and just because, and I know that they do it, geographically, and that makes sense. And, Pacific Lutheran, like I said, being the outlier, they're going to have to fly in. But, I mean, you've literally got, like I said, 3 teams within, if you add up the mileage, within 150 miles of each other. It's kind of like...
Yeah, but I will say, though, too, I mean, obviously, St. Olaf and Carleton know each other well.
Yep.
I mean, they're crosstown rivals and obviously MIAC opponents and all that.
Right, yep.
But outside of that, nobody has seen each other.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So in terms of a pod and the way that he's designed it, and then you got to think there's also 15 other pods that they're trying to put together.
Right, yeah.
I think we always look at it and say, well, why would you stack us with them and this? It's like, because there is a another 60 teams that they're shuffling around.
It's not an easy job to put that out.
No.
It's trying to decide how they're going to do this.
I've been on the
If you've been
national
on the committee, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you been on a committee, John?
No, I've
okay.
sat in on a couple of
Yeah.
of calls with the committees and everything, but
That selection Sunday is an all-day deal.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Pack a
and
lunch.
then
Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean,
You're going from the morning to the night to get that thing put together.
I've been on as late as like 11 o'clock at night, on
Before
that
anything was
selection
finalized.
Sunday.
Yeah.
And then it's not finalized. Then you get up the next Monday morning after you've had a chance to sleep on it, and everybody looks at it again and says, okay,
Is there any objections?
did we miss
Yeah.
anything here? And there have been years where there have been things missed where it's like, oh, you know what? Those two teams played each other last year, or in the tournament last year, which they try to avoid.
Right.
Or those two teams are conference opponents. They don't want to set conference opponents against each other in the first round. At some point,
Right.
you're probably playing a conference
right.
opponent if you go deep enough, right?
Yep.
Right.
But they want to avoid it obviously in the first round, and so there's just things like that
Right.
you
Yeah.
take a look at again. So it is a lot of moving parts.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And the paperwork and the amount of information has got to be just crazy.
well, and then you start making travel arrangements. And,
Right, yeah, it's just-
within seconds of the show being done, the communicators are.
Right.
Okay, I need this, and this.
The
and
host
I- and I
institutions
need
are
it-
asking, yeah.
I need it by noon tomorrow, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the emails
It's
start
the production.
it is.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
national
it-
tournament is quite the spectacle, I think. If people who don't know how much goes into it,
Right.
especially for the host institution, regardless of who's hosting, those 16 pods, it's like, okay, now.
Well, and the
it's
other thing you have
just-
to think about too is like these institutions. It's not like that's the only thing going on campus that
Right,
weekend.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
They're hosting other games. They may be hosting other tournaments.
Yep.
Yeah.
They may have teams in other sports that are gearing up for playoff runs and that kind of stuff. And so it's not like it just happens in a silo.
Right.
Right, yeah.
It's a production that happens amongst kind of the madness that goes on in the athletic department anyways, right?
I mean,
yeah.
think about it, if we were hosting this weekend, we also have a basketball tournament.
Yeah.
You've got home hockey games. I mean, there's
There's
so much happening.
yeah.
So much happening.
Yeah, you'd almost have to hire out some temporary staff just to get it all done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, but that's where you think you have to go.
Well, and again, so this is another thing that that goes into the decisions when they pick host sites is trying to not have men's and women's hosting at the same site
Right.
in the same year.
Okay.
And there have been years where they've had to do it just because not everybody wants to host for that reason, because it's a huge undertaking.
Right.
Right.
And I'm sure everybody would love to, but I think I give a lot of credit to institutions if they really feel like they are understaffed or resourced, don't host.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is something that these four teams that are going to come in that weekend, those players have worked for all year.
Right.
Some of them their entire career to get to that point, and the NCAA tournament I think is a really special deal. And if the host institution doesn't get it right, it makes it less special.
Yeah.
We've been really fortunate. A lot of the places that we've gone have just done a first-class job. Our guys have left feeling like it was really worth it to make it to that point.
Right.
To
Yeah.
just have that NCAA tournament experience.
Right.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I imagine a year from now, when you have your own facility on campus, it wouldn't shock me if we start
Putting in
trying
for
to
it.
make some inroads in putting those bids together to try and host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that something you'd like, or do you like the idea of being able to go?
I would love to host.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and if you look at it, and I don't know what the stats actually are. I would have to look this up and get back to you. But I'll just say the tournament scenario heavily favors teams who are hosting. And so it's one of those things where it's like, is it causal or correlational, right? Part of the reason that teams that are hosting go deep into the tournament is because a lot of times the best teams, the highest ranked teams, are the ones who are hosting, right? But I will say, I think sleeping in your own bed, not having to worry about travel, so if we were hosting this weekend, I would be giving a lot of work to you, to Nick, to Lynn, right?
Yeah.
And to the whole rest of the staff that's going
Right.
to chip in and help us do this thing. And they're taking care of basically everybody else, and I'll say, I'm going to take care of my own team.
Right.
But I don't have to set up buses. I don't have to set up hotels. I don't have to set up dinners and all that kind of stuff. Where when you're on the road, that's really a lot of this week is I'm trying to set up all that stuff.
Right.
Rather than just, I would love to be in a position where I could just focus on really taking care of the team, getting them prepped, scouting other teams, and just really feeling like we're going into that first weekend completely from a game prep scenario, the only priority on our plate this year, and that's just not how it is when you travel.
Yeah.
It's funny for St. Olaf, though, because they have an added advantage now because Carleton doesn't have to travel either.
Right.
So they're literally hosting you guys in Pac-Lou. That's basically like who they're hosting because Carleton isn't going to go anywhere either. They're just going to handle like they would normally handle anything else.
Yeah.
And that's what having two campuses within 2 miles of each other does for you. So it's an interesting look at the pod, just as far as logistics and stuff like that with this pod.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It's not uncommon. I mean, when we went down to St. Thomas our second year, Augsburg was
was
on
there.
that one as well. And then there are questions of do you treat this like we are traveling? I've heard of teams that have still booked hotel rooms.
I've heard that too.
And I'm sure it happens at higher levels a lot more, where you just have a bigger budget. But I have heard of teams at the Division III level that have booked hotel rooms, even if they're 30 minutes away or right in town.
Right. Interesting.
Just to keep the mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, and in some ways it probably makes sense. Like you've got a lot more control over just kind of the rest of the noise when you've got your team in a hotel setting.
Sure.
You feel a little bit more isolated just with your team. That said, a good night's sleep in your own bed, I think probably
worth a
trumps
lot.
anything else.
Yeah.
Now, if I was to rewind back to 18, 19, 20 years old, sleeping in a dorm bed, I don't know if that carries
take
the
the
same
hotel.
weight, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'll
Yep.
take the Hilton over the dorm bed any day. Yeah.
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 Right. Yeah.
How much do you bring up last year? And how much do you remind guys of just that experience and that feeling? Or don't you?
We've talked about it a few times throughout the season. I don't think I've talked about it at all this week. I think that there are things that strictly from a tactical sense we learned from last year that we will bring in. I do think that every year you gain more experience in the NCAA tournament. You start to think about different things. I mean, just how you set your roster. You get 24, so throughout the entire regular season, you have an unlimited roster. In the tournament, you're limited to 24 players. So how you tactically work that 24-man roster. So there are different considerations now than when we first went a few years back.
Sure.
Other things like, penalty kick shootout scenarios. One of the things that I've pointed out is that we have never been in an NCAA tournament where both teams have finished with 11 players for our entire stretch in the tournament. So, meaning at least one team has gotten a red card every year that we've been in the tournament in one of the games.
Oh, wow.
And so you think about that,
Interesting.
It really pushes you to start to think about, are we prepped for up
10
a
v
man,
11,
down a
11
man
v 10,
scenarios?
yeah.
Yep,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so having that experience and really, kind of just thinking about those things, I think is valuable. So specifically to just last year, could we use it as a little bit of motivation of, we were that close last year and we felt like it got taken from us or we dropped it, however you want to put it. I guess, to be honest, I don't know that we need any more motivation at this point. If you're not motivated and you're in the
Right.
NCAA tournament,
Yeah.
don't go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
How can you not be motivated to play in the NCAAs? I never have understood that one. Like that, I don't understand.
I don't know anybody that's not motivated.
Yeah.
I think that they're, a lot of it gets to like the sports psych piece of it, so it's your response when you get into situations where, and John, as a player, if you rewind back to your playing days, you played in how many NCAA tournaments? Three, right?
Final Fours.
And so, when you're in a scenario where if we win, our season continues. If we lose, it's over.
Yep.
And this team won't be the same next year. For some of the guys, they don't come back next year. It is really being on the razor's edge. And, so anytime there's that adversity, that heavy adversity, there's, it's the fight or flight response. But, if we had Barker in here, he would talk a lot about the other two that you can
Right,
respond, right?
right,
So
yeah.
it's fight or flight, or it's freeze, or it's submit. And so I don't think teams show up without motivation. I think they show up and they hit that adversity,
Right.
and they go into one of those modes of thinking. Either I'm going to flee it and, like not that they're going to run away from the field, right? But they're, it's almost like you see them just get very chaotic,
Right.
not have answers, kind of run around, like headless a little bit. Obviously, the fight response is the one you want, that you kind of stand up to the adversity and kind of attack it and push back at it, right? The freeze would be just like, and you've seen players, I've seen us in past,
Right.
I can think of one scenario in particular where there was a freeze moment where it was just like everybody was wide-eyed, everybody looked at everybody else for answers, nobody had them, including myself. We don't want that response,
Right.
you
Right,
know?
yeah.
Or it's the submission response where you essentially you start to negotiate with yourself, and you just
Right,
say,
yeah.
you know what, we had a really good run. We can walk out of here with our heads held high. Let's just get through the next however many minutes, get on the bus, go home, and say we had a great season. And those responses you have to battle against. So I don't think it's ever a matter of
Right,
lack of
yeah.
motivation. I think it's lack of preparation mentally to deal with those adverse situations.
I'd say that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We talked about it in the off season a bit, especially with my senior group when we did leadership in the spring. We talked about the NCAA tournament the prior year, and as I reflected on it a lot. So for those listening in that didn't watch the game or don't know what happened,
Probably
great
should set the
game.
table on that.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
in the
So-
snow, down at North Central. They ranked number 10 in the country. Coach Enzo there is a mentor of mine. He was at Platteville for a number of years when we were in the same terrific dude, amazing coach. They were undefeated on the season. We get down there, it's snowing on us, which was like heaven for our guys. I mean, they're out doing snow angels in the pregame, and we embraced it. The game is tied 1-1. They get a red card in the second half. Again, NCAA tournament, red cards happen. So we're up 11-10. We score with 4 minutes left in the game. And so we go up 2-1. And then we concede with 2 minutes left in the game. And my timeline's a little foggy still. We get a corner kick. So now it's 2-2. And I look at our bench, and I look at our field, and again, injuries were such a problem for us last year. I thought we need to try to win this in regulation if we can.
Right.
So because they had 10 men, they brought everybody back on their corner kick, which usually you leave somebody high.
Yep.
But because you have 10, you don't have anybody left to leave high. So I see that. I say, let's send an extra man forward then. So we didn't leave anybody back. We left one sort of half back. The corner kick comes out. Our guy, and I won't use names, but our guy goes out to meet it, doesn't get there. They break out in a counter. We have one guy back who actually goes to make a play on the ball. He gets fouled. It's not called. They go down and they score the go-ahead goal with a minute left, 90 seconds left, maybe less. I don't remember. Again, the timeline's foggy, to make it 3-2. So with 4 minutes left in the game, we feel like we've done enough to win 2-1, and we're going on to tomorrow. And within the next 4 minutes, we lost.
Yeah.
So as I reflect back on that whole occurrence, there's a lot of things I would have done differently, and none of it's on the players. It's 100% on the staff. I think there's things that I could have done differently. I think there's things that just things happen in the NCAA tournament. Luck happens, right?
Yep.
And as I reflect more and more on it, I think where I really get back to is I do feel like if the game went on 15 minutes more, I honestly think we'd go back and win the game. I think we were mentally grounded enough to deal with that adversity with less than 60 seconds. We just couldn't.
You just
We
can't.
just didn't have the time to make it right.
Yep.
Not to use the cliche Lombardi term, but that whole thing of we didn't lose, we just ran out of time. I know
Right,
it's
yeah.
cliche to say. I really felt like with the team that we had and with the mental fortitude that we had last year, we'd probably come back and win the game.
Sure.
And that's probably unfair, So if Enzo's listening to this, he's probably saying, "No way, Mooney, we had you, we had you
rewind,
stand
yeah.
down." Right, exactly. Knowing my guys, that's just how I feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, I did open with the yawn and
Yeah.
been here before, but it is a really big deal. It is difficult to do, and a all the best.
Yeah.
Thank you,
As you go into tournament number 6.
Yeah,
Right.
appreciate
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Final thoughts?
No, I just, it's gotten to the point now where I have the luxury of being able to sit back and set expectations of my own for both the men and the women. And it has gotten to a point where I've gotten a little lax and just said, yeah, they're going to go to the NCAAs again. It's a failing of having done it so many times now that I just kind of expect it.
Yep.
It's not fair to your guys. It's not fair to you, but that's just, a reflection, though, of the success you guys have had. So,
Can we chime in on the women's team real quick?
Sure.
yeah.
I think they are poised. I really do. And I know lacrosse is a really tough matchup.
They're a really good team, yeah.
Yeah.
Jason Murphy there is a friend, and they are terrific.
They're really good, yeah.
I look at sort of Allison's team, sort of a trajectory,
yeah.
and compared to our own, and I felt like it was year 3 where we really felt like we are going into this thing with expectations to
Do something, yeah.
do something.
Yeah.
We're no longer just happy to be there, and I really feel like year 1 you're just happy to be there. Year 2 you go in with those expectations, but you make a lot of mistakes.
Right. Yeah.
At least I did, and
Right,
that's
yeah.
I guess it's not a shot at all at Allison.
No.
I'd love to hear what she thinks.
I
About
think
it.
every team does that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's like year 3. It's like, okay, the expectation is there now that we're gonna go do something. The preparation is there. We've learned from last
Right,
year, really showing up with the
right.
mindset we're gonna do it, making those mistakes, learning from it, and not just as a staff, but you look at that squad.
The non-conference games they lost this year, they were super close to winning them. Mm-hmm. Game against McAllister, game against Stout. Those games were right there. The 2-1 loss against Gustavus.
Down at River Falls,
Yeah,
another close game.
the tie with River Falls. I mean, the win over Scholastica. They just in the non-conference, I thought they were really good, and they got kind of the short end of the stick a couple times on things that just sort of
So if
play
you look
here
at
or play there.
if you look at the ability of her squad, it's there.
Yeah.
You look at the leadership in her squad, it's there.
Right.
And then you look at the experience in that squad.
Yeah.
There's no better time to make a run than right
No.
now. And so I really think that they are going to go down to lacrosse, and I think it's going to be a fun game to watch.
They were.
I'm excited to see how they do.
Yeah, in their game, and we'll touch on this quickly before we let you go. In their game, I was actually more worried about their game going into that game because Northwestern had played really well going into that game. They had won 7 in a row.
Yep.
I wasn't worried about them at all.
And then they came out, and then within the first 5 minutes, though, when I saw how the bench was reacting and how they were reacting every play, I was like, they got this. They're in good shape.
Yep.
I
Because
agree.
Northwestern's bench was very sedate, and our bench was going crazy for everything. And I'm like, they're ready to go. There's not going to be.
I agree in terms of Northwestern, in terms of how good they are.
Yeah.
The job that Josh has done, and then look at their players. You've got the returning player of the year, right?
Yeah, Haley Mersberger.
Yep.
We had almost 30 goals this year.
Terrific. Okay. I was not worried about our women's team though.
Okay.
At all. I was more worried about our game. Obviously,
Right, yeah.
more riding on our game to be worried about. But I knew as soon as the semifinal ended, I'm like, Allison and her team are going to the Nationals again.
Yeah, they're gonna be ready to go.
Was not worried about them at all.
No, they were quietly confident going in, but within the first probably 20 minutes when they were starting to tilt the field, that's when I was like, okay, they're ready to go today. Like, there's not going to be a drop off. Like, we're not going to see a repeat of almost losing the crown. They're going to be ready to go. Mm-hmm. And yeah,
well, we watched the game down at Northwestern, because
Okay.
we were
Right,
there
yeah,
obviously, and we got there
Right.
early enough to watch the bulk of that game, and I just felt like everything that could go wrong for us did.
right, yeah,
And it's just like you're not going to keep Nia Wilson
Right.
and Maya Holmquist and Allison Alessi and Lindry and
Yeah.
just go down the list.
Yeah.
You will not keep that squad off the score sheet twice in a row.
yeah, yeah. They're not. Yeah,
You can't.
There's too much
You'll do it
firepower
for 90
there.
minutes.
Yeah,
You can't do it for 180.
no. There's too much firepower there for sure, especially with Maya and Nia up top. I mean, they
Well,
combine
like
that.
Cam. Again, you talk
Yeah,
about
and
depth.
Cameron Hill. And,
Think about that squad and the depth that they've got. It just
They had 15 different goal scorers this year. So you
tell
had
you.
20. They had 15.
That's
as
crazy.
much fun as
Yeah.
I love watching our guys play. I love watching that squad play.
Yeah. Well, they're really good in possession, and it's fun to watch.
It's
And
a really good brand of soccer.
yeah. I know you've enjoyed watching them almost as much as watching your guys for the last few years that you and I have talked about. It's I look forward to seeing the women play.
I enjoy watching Allison coach
Right.
And I'll just say, like, I think she's a way better. Like, if you're gonna watch like one team in terms of how they're coached, like, watch her team.
Yeah.
Well and above our team.
Yeah. Well, tactically, they're very like sound. I mean,
I've said this before. I think Allison. This is no offense to anybody else in our hallway. She is the best coach in our department, and it's been that way for a long time.
That third goal the third goal against Northwestern, they strung together like 12 passes on that sequence. It was like boom, 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 in and out, and then they crossed it in, and Maya just like flicked it over to Naya, and then she scored it. And it was like, I mean, they had Northwestern just running side to side. Like, they were just running, and finally they just ran out of gas because they were just chasing that entire sequence. And I was like, that was a thing of beauty. And I told Allison that after the game, and she was like, "Oh, really? I don't recall that."
Yeah.
You go back and watch it again.
Oh, this is just what we do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like that
exactly.
is what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a fun brand to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally in and out, like moving side to side, and then finally they got the ball up front. You know, pass it in the middle, pass it back, then back to the middle again, then to the wing, then across in, and then it was a flick, and then a goal. Like, it was like bing, 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 bing. And I was like, wow, that's impressive stuff when you can do that. That's not very many teams in college can do that, where you're going to string together 10, 12 passes, and it ends up in the back of the net. It's like, wow, that was really impressive. And that was a backbreaker. You could see Northwestern just go, like, really? This is how this is going to go? Yeah.
Yep, this is how it's going to go.
Yeah, this is how it's going to go. Yeah. So
Thanks
anyway,
for coming.
Yep. Thanks for coming. Anyway, yeah. Well, best of luck, Coach. I've enjoyed it for years and years, and you know that. Watching both teams, your team especially, you know, and the women. Now, you know, being there with the men, it's been a treat. You know, it makes my birthday weekend a lot more fun.
Well, hopefully we can give you a good birthday present.
Right? Yeah,
A late one.
Yeah, a late one, a belated
one. Yep.
Yeah, a belated one.
Yep.
So, thanks, Coach Mooney, for stopping by, and best of luck. We'll all be keeping an eye on you this weekend for sure.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Always fun.
For Coach Mooney, for the Big Sound Matt Johnson, I am John Garver, and thank you for tuning in to I Have the Swarm.